We have come with open hearts. Let the ancient words impart. I want you to look at some of those words in Daniel chapter 6. Just a few verses to kind of get our thoughts started here this evening. You know this story more than likely, but that doesn't mean we've learned it, does it? Just because we know it. I think that's our tendency sometimes. Daniel 6:1. It pleased Darius. Darius is the new king now that Daniel is serving under as he continues to be in exile from his homeland, as he faces pressure to conform to a world that is not as God would want it to be. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account, so that the king might suffer no loss. I wonder what he's worried about losing. Loyalty or taxes, one means the other to a king, doesn't it? Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So the high officials and the satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom, but they could find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful and no error or fault was found in him. So the men said, "We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God." Oh, that the world would look at us and say, we couldn't find anything to say about him unless it has to do with how much they love their God, with how much they follow him and how committed they are. That's the only thing we know for sure that we can find to pick at. You know, people in our world spend a lot of time, effort, and money in order to feel safe, feel secure, to feel comfortable, but certainly protected, I think. Protection is a big deal to us. Y'all seen that Subaru commercial? I know you have. You know, the one where they're showing the scene and they're talking about the Subaru, and it says, you know, the time I loved my Subaru the most was when they walked away from it. You know what I'm talking about? And it's got the picture of the Subaru all beat up and crushed, and then the dad and the girl running and hugging the mom as the ambulance and the emergency cars are hovering around. And I'll be honest, I watched that and I get a little, do you do that? Just a little bit. I'm kind of like, oh my goodness, that's so touching. And then I pull out my phone and I'm like, maybe I should get a Subaru. I don't know. And it's weird for me because I thought, you know, growing up, Subarus were the realm of grandmas and people that just spend all their time outside. Like that was your choices. And I know I'm talking about some of you Subaru drivers here tonight. So you're either a grandma or you're camping in the Grand Canyon all the time and you don't shower for weeks on it. That's what I thought Subarus were about. But apparently they are the car of safety, at least according to commercials. They're the ones where you can be safe. We all want to feel safe. Alarms, locks. Some people build bunkers and have panic rooms, I guess. But there's a common denominator here. I'm not against being safe, but the common denominator is what can be troubling. We want to be safe according to the power and ingenuity and ability that we possess or can afford or build or figure out. And you think about, for example, King Darius here in Daniel chapter 6. What was his safety net? He set all these people up to manage the kingdom, right? So that he could suffer no loss, so that everything would be covered. And a lot of his safety was built into the laws and regulations, to his authority, to his power, as well as his army, the people that could enforce it for him. Kind of like we are in some ways with our locks and doors. You ever lay in bed at night and you're laying there and all of a sudden you think, did I lock the door? Anybody else ever do that? And then, good, everybody. And then once you do that, you might even think, yeah, I'm pretty sure I locked the door. But once that niggling of doubt has entered the equation, what do you ultimately end up doing? You got to get up. And you got to make sure that the door is locked. And you go and you're like, I knew I locked that door. And then you're mad because now you got up and you're not very sleepy and it's going to take you another hour and a half of laying there and rolling around before you can get it figured out. But all this stuff is what we feel like we need to do. But maybe we need to have trust, or at least as much trust or more trust, in the things that we aren't in control of. I'm sure Darius thought his palace was quite safe, but Daniel 6 indicates it was actually a den of vipers. Why were these men so bothered by Daniel? And you know what else is weird? We don't hear much from Daniel in this entire episode. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever read through it looking to see, well, what does Daniel say? What's his reaction to this law that they're going to make up here in a minute? What's his emotional state? He doesn't react. He doesn't feel jealous or threatened or enraged. I agree. Do you remember what the officials come up with, don't you? They said, we've got to get this law to do with his God. And so what they do is they say, hey, Darius, we're going to put a law on the books that can't be changed for 30 days. That no one can make any prayers or any petitions to any God other than you. Because you're this great figure of power and wonder and divine right to rule. And so we're going to put this law on the books. And Daniel knows this. He's obviously in the political system. He doesn't complain. He doesn't whine. He doesn't gripe. He doesn't moan. He doesn't really do anything except one thing. What does he do? He just prays. Look here in 6. Verse 10, as you continue, this is after the law's been passed. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he staged a protest, right? No. It says he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem, and he got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God. Why didn't he gripe a little bit, huh? Why didn't he get down on his knees and say, God, do you see what these people are doing to me? This is unfair, and life's unfair, and things aren't working out, and hey, I need a little help here, God. What are you doing up there? Are you asleep at the wheel again? I mean, why don't you help us out? It says he prayed and he gave thanks to his God, as he had done previously. And of course, so these men then, who had come together and plotted this up, they run as quickly as they can to the king. And they say, oh, king, this Daniel guy that you're so high on, he's already breaking your law. And you know what the law says? He's got to go in the den of lions. I do wonder sometimes about Christians and the way we react to the world. And anytime we feel like anything's being threatened, and don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for the freedom we have. And I hope that we continue to have it. But sometimes I feel like there's been this overreactive, the sky is falling, woe is us, it's all against us. Nothing's running right, nothing's going our way. And God's sitting up there going, what do you think I'm doing? Can't you just keep trusting me? And can't you just keep seeking me? Man, this is a word, is it not? About the false security of power and the quiet strength of prayer. And I think prayer looks weak to the world, and I think sometimes prayer seems weak to Christians because we don't do it very well, or at least we don't do it consistently enough. And yet, here you've got this scene with this frantic scheming and these terrified officials worried about their status and power and writing laws on the books, contrasted with this confident posture of prayer that Daniel lives. Which one of those looks more fearful to you, by the way? Which one seems more secure? The most dangerous man in Babylon that day was on his knees 3 times every day, calling out to God. Why don't we pray more? And I know as I say that, some of you do. Some of you absolutely are engaged in relentless prayer. But here's where I think we get messed up sometimes. Sometimes prayer is reduced from what it's supposed to be. It's reduced from actual communion with God and His presence to something just transactional. That's what it becomes. It becomes, here's what I have to do so I can get what I need from you, God. I've got to pray in order to get what I want. I've got to pray in order to have you protect me. I've got to pray in order to have you keep me healthy. I've got to pray in order to have you bless me. That's not what prayer is. Prayer is seeking God in a posture of trust, saying, you know what, God, you are so good. I just want to be with you. And I want to thank you. And I want to show my confidence in you and my commitment to the fact that what you intend is what will be. If Daniel, by the way, believed that prayer was just a way to get what he wanted, I think he would have quit. Because what's he got that he wants up to this point in his life? Did Daniel want to be exiled in Babylon? No. Did he want to spend his entire life in a country not his own, not being able to worship at the temple that he had so much hope in because it was the signifying presence of God? Did he want his people to be mistreated and be abused, to be foreigners in a foreign land? Daniel didn't want any of this. If Daniel saw prayer as just a transactional deal to say, hey, God, here's what I need, it's not working, I think he would have gave up. But that's not what prayer was. It was how he spent time in the presence of God. He knew it was the best place to be. You know what prayer does? It hands the controls over to God. It says, hey, God, I can't run this show. I can't keep this car on the road. I don't always know what's going on, but I know you do. So I'm spending time with you in confidence. Man, it's hard to give up control, isn't it? You like letting go of the wheel? Teaching Jace to drive over the last year has been kind of a visual reminder. It's not been bad. He just throws his hand up. I'm not criticizing you. I was getting ready to criticize me. You believe that? I really was. That was my point here, was to criticize me. Because guess what I do as he's driving? You think I sit there quietly and I'm like, oh, you're doing great, buddy. You're doing great. No, I don't do that. I'm human, right? And my way's better. Even if another way's okay, my way's better. That's control. And I'm saying the whole time, now, do you see that guy up there? He might be pulling out. You watching him? Yeah, Dad, I see him. Oh, okay, well, you're not slowing down is all I'm noting. Like, I would be letting off the accelerator and getting my foot toward the brake just in case he starts to come out. I don't see you doing that. You're not doing that. I'm just saying maybe you should do that. Okay, Dad. And he takes all this criticism real well, doesn't he? He's like, oh, thank you so much, Dad, for being such a diligent instructor in the art of driving. I'm so glad you're in the passenger seat with me. That's not what he says. But it's hard. It's hard to let go of any amount of control. I'm telling you. Is it possible that sometimes we want God's gifts more than God himself? Is that possible? It's like, God, hey, I'm praying to you just to enhance my control in things. Let me pray so you give me more of what I want. And God says, what's this about? I want you to want me. That's what I want you to want. Want me. Daniel's prayer, by the way, wasn't about God getting him out of this pickle. I think it was about God being with him. I do not think when he went to pray after hearing that document signed, he said, well, God, I've tried so hard to be good, and here's what it got me. Are you going to fix this or not? God, I've prayed to you faithfully all these years. It's your turn to hold up your end of the deal. I truly believe it was, no, I've got to be with God still. No matter what you say, no matter what laws you write, I have to spend time in the presence of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, of the Creator of the earth, of Jehovah, Yahweh, God. And man, was God with him. Look here, let's pick up in verse 17. So Daniel's been thrown in the den of lions. The king had to follow through on it. And in verse 17 it says, the stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den. And the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. And the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep, it eluded him, it fled from him. And then at the break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. And as he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king said, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? And Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him and also before you. O king, I've done no harm. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. And Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought, and they were cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. It's always so weird when I read this that the king was the guy that couldn't sleep. But nothing is said about Daniel. Nothing said about his night of sleep or night of concern. We assume he rested peacefully, safer in the den of lions than in the palace of Babylon. You know all this points to Jesus, don't you? Because years later, another man was sealed in a pit, wasn't he? And we call it a tomb. What would they roll in front of the entrance? They rolled a stone in front. Like Daniel, he was innocent. Like Daniel, he was maliciously accused by the jealous leaders of the day who couldn't stand the attention and authority and following he was gaining. But unlike Daniel, he was not spared from death. He went through it. God did not spare his own son because of the safety and deliverance he wants to give you and I. Romans 8:32, he who did not spare his own son but gave him up for us all, how will he not also along with him graciously give us all things? And just like we saw on the occasion of Daniel, God still delivered. And what Jesus proved is God delivers not simply from lions, but from sin and death. And I don't know how to convince people, and sometimes I don't know how to convince us, that sin and death are actually the biggest problems in the world. I don't know why we struggle to wrap our minds around that. Maybe it's because too often sin and death is abstract to us. It's not very personal. It's not like our bills and our politics and our over-busy lives and our stress and our struggles at work and all the things that bother us. Listen, whatever other problems you and I face, they are terribly minor in comparison to the havoc sin wreaks on our souls, to the distortion it creates in what should be the image of God, and to death itself. And I'm not just talking about physical death here. Yeah, physical death's a symptom of the deeper problem of a soul that is lost and separated from God. And what do we do about these issues? A lot of times we numb ourselves with smaller fears and lesser pleasures. Culture teaches to manage the symptoms instead of dealing with the disease. So when something's bothering you, when something's not quite right in your life, and it's probably sin, but you don't want to deal with the problem itself, you'd rather treat the symptoms. That's what culture does. It's kind of how we handle the common cold, isn't it? You can't fix it. So you just got to treat the symptoms and hope it'll eventually go away. And that's fine with the common cold. Doesn't work so well with sin. You can treat the symptoms and ignore it for a while, but eventually it's going to catch up to you. Why put a Band-Aid on a deadly wound? Why settle for a Band-Aid when Christ has already beat it? 1 Corinthians 15, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your sting? O death, where is your victory? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. I'll tell you this too, Satan wants us to ignore the real enemy. He says, look how terrifying the lions are and don't trust God. Those lions will eat you. And we miss the deadly truth of the world's palaces. We are safer in the den if we are with God. So, who are you with tonight? Who's with you? Who do you seek constantly? Who are you saying, I can't be without? I can't be without. Man, Daniel could not be without God. Can we say that about our lives? As we get up and go through our week, is God continually before us as the one that we serve and cling to and look to? Are we reminding ourselves again and again of what he did for us through Jesus to give us a victory over sin and death? And are we living that out in a way that shows how meaningful it is, committed to him? I hope that you are tonight. I hope that God is continually before you as the one that you serve, and that you cannot look anywhere but to him for safety and security. But maybe that's not where you are. Maybe you're not there because you haven't yet understood it, the significance of the life and death of Jesus and the hope found through the cross and his resurrection. Maybe you've never become a part of it. As Paul says in Romans 6:3-4, when we're baptized into Christ, we're baptized into his death, right? And then we're raised up out of that water, out of that watery grave, into newness of life. Why? Because water's magical? No. Because faith and obedience is. When we submit to what God sets before us in trust and confidence of what he accomplishes through Jesus, we find ourselves washed clean and given the gift of the Holy Spirit. Maybe tonight there's where you need to begin. And we're more than ready and willing to help you. Or maybe you've got another need, something that we can help you with, pray about. Whatever it is, if you need to come, we invite you to do so while we stand, while we sing.